opportunity to visit with our guest speaker tonight most of the day today. I listened to a nice presentation that he gave this morning at the CEP breakfast. I spent about an hour and a half with him at lunch. I came back for another hour with our assistant principals this afternoon, and I'm sticking around for round 4 tonight because I like what this man is saying. Ray McNulty comes with a long list of outstanding accomplishments, and he'll share some of those things with you in his presentation. So I asked him to tell me what he really wants me to say when I introduce him tonight. So here's the deal. He's got a new dog. You might tell you about that. He has 9 grandchildren, 1 on the way, soon to be 10. He's flying back tonight to Boston, where they just had an ice storm. Ray McNulty is very happy to be with us here tonight. And I want to tell you about the last closing part of this program. We're going to give the mic to Ray for about an hour, maybe an hour and 10 minutes or so. And then he's going to make a real quick exit, and we're going to get him to the airport before he misses that flight back to the snowy north. But this time I'd like to introduce you. Please give a warm welcome to Ray McNulty.
Thank you. Thanks, George. Thank you. So how's everyone doing? All right? Yeah. Well, good. So I'm going to come down and hang out with you down here. It is great to be here, and it's been a fun day. I've started this morning at 7:30 or so with the breakfast, and move up to this point and share some thinking with you. Oh, there we go. I'm very excited, though, about the chance to share some thinking with you. And I want to start, before I get into my talk, I just want to give you a sense that I'm not here as an expert. I'm not here as somebody who knows everything that needs to be known in education. I've had a pretty diverse career. I've been a teacher and a principal and a superintendent for a little over 20 years. I was commissioner of education in Vermont. Left there to work with Bill and Melinda Gates when they started their foundation, and I did 2.5 years at the Gates Foundation working on secondary education reform. It was kind of a fun time. I got a chance to look all around the world at different schools and how schools all over the place work. And I left there to work with a very large consulting group that actually was small, and then we built it up, and it's led by a guy by the name of Bill Daggett, and a lot of people in education know Bill. He's a futurist, and Bill and I are partners. We're still partners. I stepped down as president to make a run with a company called Bain Venture Capital that was doing some work with a big online school, because I felt like I knew a lot about ground-based education, but I knew nothing about the online world, and I felt like I needed a new IQ. So I jumped over and worked on that. And then 2 years ago, I took a position as the dean at the School of Education at Southern New Hampshire University, which is a great place to work. Anybody know Southern New Hampshire University? Anybody here? You know us? People know us. We're sometimes you see our ads even here in this area. The biggest claim to fame right now is I used to be a trustee at the university back in the early 2000s when we couldn't pay our bills, and I think this year we'll do over $500 million in revenue. We were just fairly recently we were named in 2012 we were named the 12th most innovative company in the world. On our way pretty soon to we have a campus that houses about 4,000 traditional day, dormitories and football and actually soccer. But a traditional school. We have an 80,000 plus on its way to 100,000 this year students online, and we have another school called College for America, which is an entirely competency-based college and university that we deal with. We deal with companies and create learning opportunities for their employees, and it's just interesting. It's a kind of university. It's private nonprofit, so we're not public nonprofit. We're private nonprofit, and I shamelessly share their story with you because we're constantly reinventing our work, and that's kind of a piece of the story I wanted to bring to you tonight. This work about education in the world today. And as I said, I hope to challenge your thinking a little bit. Hope we have a little fun, and let me get started with two quick points that I want to make before I really get into my talk. And the first is that you have to understand in this world today that learning in a digital age is different. I was trained as an educator. I started my teaching career in 1973. I was trained to use textbooks and the Encyclopedia Britannica. There was no internet. I was a teacher that, you know, I remember many times I was lucky I had the Encyclopedia Britannica in my room. And I was trained to use it. So if we were going to study Nebraska, I told the people this morning, you know, you go to the end, you look it up, you read 6 pages, you draw a map of Nebraska, you find a picture of corn, you cut it out, you put it in the middle, and you say Nebraska. And you hang it up, and people say, oh, look, they know about Nebraska. That's right. That's what we did. That's what it was. How many people remember? I know some of you out there remember this stuff, you know. And I was trained to do that. I was a teacher. I mean, I was trained to do that, right? And the other point I want to make is that if we don't embrace the world that we're living in right now, we will, you know, if we don't end up embracing this change, the end is near. I mean, there is clearly, we clearly have to rethink the whole world of learning. And there are lots of great things happening in the world. And, you know, the United States is the place where innovation should be at the lead point of this work. So I want you to think about those as I go through my talk. And this is how I like to set my talks up. I'm a trained educator, so I have a lesson plan. That's my lesson plan. I'm going to talk about 3 things that are going to connect those 2 points I just gave you. I'm going to talk about the landscape of education as we know it today. And then I want to talk about something I've been studying and talking a lot about, which is self-learning. So this is when I always ask the audience, I say, how many of you have learned something since you left school? Anybody? Yeah. So here's the deal. How come it's not valued? How come it's not valued by like something that you learned in school? Just think about that. So I worked for Bill Gates for 2.5 years. I can tell you this. He cannot be a technology director in a public school in the United States because he has no degree. Right? He doesn't have a bachelor's degree. Now here's what I do know. He knows it. He could do the work. Do you think he could? I mean, I think he could. I know if I was at the university and he wanted to be, I would not worry about his credentials. I'd be much happier that he brings his wallet. But the fact is, you know, we can't get him, we could not get him through certification because he doesn't have a degree, but he knows what to do. And valuing learning that does not happen just in front of a teacher in a class is something that is, in the digital world, is happening more and more. And we got to figure out how to value that. And there are a lot of states beginning to do that, and I'm going to talk about that. And last is I'll close with a very brief talk about like the future of learning. What are some of the elements? Things like that. That's where we're going to go. And I always will tell you when I'm changing and where I'm going, so I'm going to talk about the education landscape today, right now. So here's what I know. I don't know a person that doesn't want the schools to be better. But no one wants them to be different. Or very few people want them to be different. And here's the fact. They're going to have to be different before they get better. I'm going to share with you some of the critical flaws in our system as we know it today, how it's designed. It's not designed to really live in the digital world that we live in. And you see, I also think that you can't build the future by perfecting the past. Like we can continue to try to be really good at what we're doing in our schools, but as good as we can make the design that we have now, it won't catch what's happening in the world. Does that make sense? I mean, we've got to start to move it. I was meeting with the administrators earlier, and I said to them, as leaders in schools, we have to do 2 things at once. We have to fix the base, we have to do what we're currently doing even better, but we also have to invent the future. And you can't do one and not the other. You got to do them both at the same time. And that's a challenge, but that's the fact. That is the fact. So I want you to watch this video clip. It'll be a little boring in the beginning, but so most of you that were with me today have seen this already. But
and now it's Bill Holland coming into the pits in car 3. Bill hails from Philly and is currently in 2nd place and hoping to take the checkered flag here today. And the fuel goes in. Having a bit of trouble with that wheel nut. Everybody's standing by. The driver getting refreshment now. Also getting updates on the track surface. This guy is super keen to get back out there on the track. And there he goes. All the guys are lined up, ready? And there it is. The quick car changes. The fuel goes in. Everything ready. And up it goes.
so I love showing that, and as many times as I see it, it's like I'm watching and like, how do they do it? Like, I mean, it's just, but you know, you could try to perfect that first kind of model, but unless you embrace the tools of the future, yeah, you're never going to get there. I mean, it's impossible. Totally impossible. And you think about that. When I watch that, at least I can say this. I'm not going to see, you know, you have a really good school system. I know that. And those people in the 1950 pit crew, they had a really good car. But it's not the same world anymore. And you know, you can't sit there handing the driver a paper cup and say, here, have a drink, you know, and how's the track out there? Oh, really good. Yeah, have another sip. We'll clean your windshield and you'll be off soon. You know, they work at a totally different level, right? And you just look at that. Actually, I had a grandson that I showed him this, and he was so excited about seeing that second one. He jumped on the internet and he started to find out, like, there are like, you know, engineers in that pit crew. There are people that are, you know, they have PhDs in, you know, science and all of this. They're sitting in there, I mean, they're using some of the best tools in the world, and it's a totally different thing. You can't compete. And so my point is, it's about first different before you can get better. You know, a lot of people would resist going to all those things that we saw there, but they would resist it, you know. So here's what you need to think about. Here's what's happening in the world today. This is a vision of what happens in 60 seconds, every 60 seconds on the internet. So every 60 seconds on the internet, there are almost 700,000 Google searches every 60 seconds, right? Every 60 seconds, they're uploading 25 hours of video every 60 seconds. I mean, I remember waiting to get the update of the Encyclopedia Britannica, which was, you know, I got the like insert, you know, here you go, and that's great. But, you know, this is a very, very different world. Most of you that are out there, if you have your, you know, what we call phones, but you know, you have access to over 1 billion web pages. You have access to some of the best lectures in the world. You have access to good stuff and not so good stuff. I'm not going to say it's all good, but the point is that's the world today. And you know, we can't think about operating a school the same way. Say, teaching is really one, but not the only way to learn. We have to figure out how we value learning that does not happen right in front of each other. The student can be home all summer long and can do incredible learning. And then, you know, how would you deal with that? So I could tell you, in the state of New Hampshire, they abolished the Carnegie unit. They basically, as many states have done, and they said, time doesn't matter anymore. It's if they can do it, you got to give them credit. If they can demonstrate proficiency, you have to give them credit. So a student could, sit and take a U.S. history class in the summer, show up at school and say, hey, I can, give me the test, question me, I can do it. In most schools we would say, no, you haven't sat 180 days in my class, and so you'll sit first and then we can deal with it. But that's not the way the future of the world is. So the point is that learning has expanded at a rate that has far outpaced our conceptions of teaching. It's really not about, I don't mean this in a negative way because I know there's a lot of educators here, but I'm an educator. It's really not about teaching anymore. It's about learning. Right? It's about learning. So just think about this. Think about using this kind of technology to teach students. 3D virtual environment. You want to talk about the whales? Let's bring them up in the class. Let's have one come up right here and take a look at it. I mean, it's just different. And it's not, I mean, this is today. This isn't the future. This is today. I was chair of the national, I just stepped down as chair 4 months ago, chair of the National Dropout Prevention Board. And I built this slide for the Dropout Prevention Board. And let me just share this with you, because I'm going to share what a critical flaw is in our schools today. This is not caused by the educators, not caused by the school boards, not caused by anybody, but this is how we operate and think about schools. So the vertical axis, not where it says knowledge and skills, that's like, think of that as all the content you need to learn in first grade, second grade, kindergarten, algebra 1, freshman high school. It's all your content, all right? The line on the bottom, as you see it says number of days. I'm going to pick a number out of the air. I'm going to say 180 days, because in 180 days in the US, when you say that, it's close, all right? So here's the deal. We give every first grader 180 days to learn the first grade material. We give every freshman in high school 180 days to learn freshman material. You get 180 days. Everybody gets it. Right? I like to think of those students, I call them as the on-pace students. They need exactly 180 days. But here's what we know. There are a lot of students that don't need 180 days to learn that. There are lots of students that could do a lot of that in 60 days. There are students that could do math in 60 days but need 220 days to do the English. But we don't give them that, we give them 180 days. We have a lot of students that need more than 180 days, but we give them 180 days. Now just think about that. If you, like, I look at my 9 grandchildren and I think they all didn't walk at the same time and they didn't talk at the same time. They're all different. But like, there's not a book that says, well, give them 180 days and they can walk, and then another 180 days and they can talk, and oh, this is cool. Look at that, how they progress. It's really cool. And it doesn't happen that way. They're not like that. They're not like that. Now, when you think about that, those kids up there and the ones that need less time, when I was doing the National Dropout Prevention Board, we have a lot of those kids. We make them wait 180 days, and guess what? They get bored, and they basically walk. They make a bad decision, but for them it's a good decision. Does that make sense to you out there? I mean, this is a challenge. This is compounded even more by our current demographic in our country. We have incredible diversity, which is a strength. I'm not saying it's not, but when the schools were designed, it was more of a middle. And now it's more like we have incredible diversity, and we want them all to do the same thing at the same time, and they don't. Now, when I explain this chart, sometimes I use my wife as an example. She's a runner. I tell everybody I am not. I'd rather walk. Thank you. But she's a runner, and if you thought about a running race, for those of you that are runners, and like she runs half marathon, so what's that, 13.1 or whatever it is. So if you think, if educators under this design set up a race, the way the race would work is you got 2.5 hours to get to the finish line. So all those elite runners that get to that 13.1, like in an hour and 20 minutes or less or whatever it is, they can't cross the line. They wait till 2 hours and 30 minutes goes click. So everybody starts approaching the line. They all build up really close to the line. And at the 2 hour and 30 moment, they all step across and the clock stops. So all those people, they get an A, even though some of them could have gotten there a lot sooner. Then you start looking back at the people that didn't do it. And you start giving them grades, you know, and convince them that they can't do it. Right? Now here's what I know. If you gave me time, I could do the 13.1 miles. I would not run, I would walk. And I would stop at Starbucks every now and then. But if you gave me the time, I could get there. And if you set the time at a fixed moment, I can't get there. I don't know, I'd get a ride. But I mean, the thing is, I would cheat. It wouldn't be good. So, see, I think that when you're focused on seat time, you're focused on the wrong end of the kid, right? It's about whether they could do it and what kind of supports and how quickly and whatnot, but it's about their achievement. It's not about ranking and sorting them based on time applied to their thinking. Now, I know that sounds complex and problematic, but that's the fact. We know. We know those things. So, as I said to you earlier, if you think about our kids, you know, like in the 20th century, there was a bell curve. There were a lot of people in the middle. But we're incredibly diverse, and so batch education isn't working as effectively. It's just not getting us the results we want. By the way, public education and education in general is performing at a higher rate than it ever has in the history of our country. We educate more people to higher levels than ever before, but we can't get to them all with the model that exists. You just can't. It's impossible. So we have to embrace this idea of change, right? We can't keep trying to perfect the model that we have, because the ship has left. I mean, it has gone, right? When I talk about, and I'm not standing here advocating technology and online. I'm advocating lots of different models, and I'll talk about that. But the fact of the matter is, online learning, hybrid learning, it's not new. It's been around a long time now. It's very sophisticated. Anytime, anywhere, any pace learning is happening all over the place. Companies are training most of their employees now online. They don't say, oh, let's all get together and we're going to have, HR is going to tell you about something. No, they say, when you have time, jump on, watch this, answer the questions, and get it done. That's what they do. They don't say, oh, let's all get together and listen to them talk about, you know, a new policy. No, they don't do that. They allow you to take it, fit it in when you can. That's an important aspect of this world we live in. So I want you to think about this. This is from a book called The Great Shift. I don't like to read a lot to people, but this is kind of a statement. Knowing with certainty that someone has mastered a discipline means it shouldn't matter how the person got there, right? Shouldn't matter how the person got there or what school they attended. If someone can show you they can do something, they ought to get credit for it. And when that starts to happen, it really resets education all across the country, all across the world, when we get to that point. I mean, how many of you have taught yourself something? I mean, have people taught themselves something? Guess what? Here's what we know from the neuroscientists. When you teach yourself something, you will never forget it. When I teach you something in class and you fill in the blanks and do all that and you leave and the next day you come in and I'll say, let's think back to that test on the Constitution yesterday. And they go, who? What? You know, that was yesterday. It's gone. I did what you told me to do. Now give me something else. You know, that's not learning. You know, that's playing a game. That's not going to get us where we need to be. So the point is, what kind of education do we need at this moment in history? This is a question that goes around all over the place. So most of the people that I kind of associate with play in this arena of talking about this. So they say to us this: if we want to touch the next generation of learners, we have to think about not one model. It's about traditional learning, it's about hybrid, it's about online, it's about blended. It's whatever way works. In math, it might work one way for you, and in science, it might work another way for this child and whoever. It's just, when you give it in one way, it's not going to really get the result. I mean, you all now shop, a lot of you shop online. And you go online and you poke around where you feel comfortable. It's a lot of personalization. See, it's about personalized learning, not about, it's like, what do you need? That's what it's about. It's also about engaging work. So when I was at the Gates Foundation, we did a study. We asked over 760,000 kids to give us a word to describe education. What'd they say? Boring. Yep. Yeah, that's right. That's what they said. It's boring. And we know it. That's the saddest thing. And if I bore you, you have a right to go on Amazon and shop or balance your checkbook, do something, right? But I mean, it's got to be engaging. It's got to be exciting. People say, well, I have a lot of people that say, well, no, they just got to get and grit and do it, and they will. But what you want to create is you want to create a learner. You want to create a learning machine. You don't want to create just somebody who can spit out answers at you. You want people, and I'll talk about this, but that's what you're really looking for. And last, it needs to be competency-based. What do I mean by that? Well, here's what I mean. What's a B? What's a B in English? Oh, it's a good grade. Well, what does it mean you can do? What can you do? And so what we see, there's a massive trend, massive movement toward competency-based education in the United States. We have an entire division at the university creating this the College for America. There are no classes. It's about competency-based education. You just got to show that you can do something. So if you look at this map, and interesting enough, Florida's colored green. That's your state, if I recall where I am today. But here's the thing. Those red states, they're not Republican or Democratic, they're just red, or whatever color that is, that color there. See, New Hampshire, Maine, Iowa, Colorado, Arizona, and Oregon. Down here they talk about them being advanced states. They've already eliminated time. They said time is not a factor anymore. They abolished the Carnegie Unit. Carnegie Unit is a regulation that we use in school that says, you have so many hours for every class. It's all based on hours. No, it's not. In those states, it's on competence. State of Maine, you cannot graduate from high school in 2018. You don't graduate by grades. You graduate by a list of competencies that you can do. So competency-based education, they basically think about it this way. If you can, let's say, using an Excel spreadsheet, you either can do it or you can't do it. There's not like a B, right? It's not like a C, or even passing at a low grade. A lot of people can pass at a standard that's pretty low. No, competency-based education raises the standards for performance by you've got to be able to do it. Demonstrate that you could do it. It's not about a grade. It's about competence. And you can see states are moving. The green states are developing. So somewhere out there in Florida, they're beginning to move at this. So just about this time, when I start talking about competency-based education, people start saying, this guy is a crackpot and a nut. We can't do this. It just won't work. So I want you to watch this video, and then I'll explain why I showed you this video.
This is the hollow head. Actually, at the moment, it's a perfectly normal head of Charlie Chaplin. But wait, as it comes round, you'll see, or will you, that it's hollow. The back of it, coming round now, is actually a hollow mask. It appears to rotate in the opposite direction, and amazingly, the nose sticks out, although it's actually sticking in. Coming round now is the normal, correct, as it were, face, and wait again as it comes round, and you'll see this extraordinary thing like Jekyll and Hyde. Both the noses stick out because it's so unlikely that a nose sticks in that a face is hollow. So you see it as convex, although it's in fact concave, as now.
So, I mean, you can get that online and show it to people and make them laugh and all that. But here's what happened. You see faces all day long. And your brain says, when I see a face, the nose sticks out, the cheeks stick out. So what happens is your brain overrides your eyes. It basically says, that's not right, I'm going to fix it for you. Before you can even I watched this like 30 times one time on a flight from Chicago to LA, and I kept saying, it's a mask, it's a mask. And like my brain kept saying, no, the nose sticks out. And I, you can get dizzy trying to watch it. Like you can get to a nanosecond where you can see it, but then your brain does, nope, that's not how it's supposed to look. Why did I show that to you? I showed it to you because everybody has been in a school, knows schools, knows what schools are about. So when someone says something like, needs to be personalized, it's like your brain says, no, schools aren't like that. Schools are like this. And then when someone says it's competency, no, schools give grades. No, schools do this. And so why change doesn't happen is because what is our dominant logic controls our thinking. And it forces us to have this argument with ourselves. Like, no, that can't be a school. That's crazy. You can't do that. Well, the fact of the matter is you can. And so I show that because I think you need to understand the fight that you're going to have when we talk about these things. So let me show you what disruption in this thinking looks like. So there's your school. Let's pick a school. I don't know. Is there a name a high school here? Is there Westport High School? There we go. There's Westport High School. You're all faculty at Westport High School. Everybody here is a faculty member. I'm the principal, though. Okay? So I'm the principal at Westport High School, and this is a faculty meeting. And Sarah has an idea. So she puts her hand up and says, I know a way to fix that. I got this great idea. So Sarah shares her idea with us. So here's what we do. We take our school and we squeeze Sarah's idea into it. Like that. Sarah says, I know how to fix that problem. We'll do this. And then we say, yeah, but you know what, Sarah? Our idea is a little strange. So we do this to her idea. We make it fit the system we have. See, what we do is we cut off, this is by the way called sustaining innovation. There is a theory behind this, but what we do is we cut off the things we can't see happening in the school. Because our dominant logic says, that can't work. So cut that away, and then we'll take pieces of your idea and do that. That's what we do. That's what dominant, does that make sense what dominant logic causes us to do? So those things right there I refer to as next practices, not best practices. They're the things on the cutting edge that we should start doing. So when you think about this, this is how this should work. So if somebody has an idea, so Sarah has an idea, you take the idea and you push it into the system and you make the system change to accept the idea. That's called disruptive innovation. That disrupts the system. Now the problem about this is that early forms of disruption are not good, generally. All right? So the one I used with the administrators, I think, this afternoon, I used bag phone, right? Do you all remember the first cell phone? Remember the bag phone? And the antenna that was magnetic that went on your roof? And that if you didn't take it off when you went through the car wash, like someone like that went, pew, you know, and like you lost it, and you carried this bag around going, isn't this cool? I got this portable phone, right? Now, I want you all in the room to think about this. That bag phone was pushed in just like this thing. It was, they started putting them out into the public. They pushed it in there, they pushed it into the public, and because they did that, you have what you have in your pockets now. That iPhone was not the first cell phone. It's about the 15th generation of change. But they pushed it out, and they made it better, and they kept making it better, and making it better, and making it better, and making it better, and that's what we got today. See, disruption is you've got to put the idea into the system to see how the system reacts. And they didn't say, well, look, bag phones are terrible, let's throw them away. They said, how do we, it's working a little bit, make it better. It's working a little better, now let's make it even better. Let's get rid of that antenna, right? Let's do this, let's do that. And they were able to create what we have today. That's That's how transformation occurs. The idea that first goes out is not perfect. Remember, some of you will remember this. I didn't use this earlier with the groups because, like, I think it was just a younger group and we're more mature. But do you remember the first transistor radios? Remember the AM transistor radios? I know some of you, like, you had to move your head to get the signal. But you see, if we didn't, the transistor radio was a disruptive innovation. Before that, you had tubes and you had to stay plugged in and you had to sit by the radio to listen to it. So people would walk around the street going, look, I got this thing. It's a transistor radio. And they turn their head and, yeah, now you can hear it. It's AM. But you can, and people were ecstatic about it. Well, if we didn't do that, we wouldn't have a lot of things that we have. So we have to think about the same thing when we think about learning in schools. It's like, how do we move an initiative in that slowly becomes the next iteration and the next and the next? Because you just think of that 1950s pit crew is like where we are. Does that make sense, that the theory behind that? So a lot of people at this point in time say, well, policy doesn't allow us to do that. Well, here's the facts around policy. I was Commissioner of Education in Vermont. I could tell you this for a fact. Policy is the last thing to change. Because you can't change policy unless you have a practice that gets results that informs policy to change. So people say, I can't do that because, no, well, you're not, I'm not saying do weird things. I'm just saying do things that make some sense, but while you're making these changes, you got to document it. And you got to say, look at the stuff we're doing and look at the results we're getting. And then we try things. That's how change occurs. So you can't be, I'm not suggesting doing like, hanging people by their feet so that the blood flow goes to their head and they'll read better. That's not, I mean, it's just, think about practical things, right? That's what we're talking about. So think of the changes we've gone through, all right? Now, I mean, we had smoking areas in our schools. We had smoking in school. But not only that, but we had smoking on planes. People would light up cigarettes in the aisles, right? You do that, try it today, go ahead, light a match. Just see how far you get. I mean, but it won't happen. Now, these are not simple changes. These were really difficult changes. So what I'm talking about is not simple stuff. This is hard stuff, right? Look at, I finally gave up my landline this year, I did, and it's like, I'm still shaking a little bit, but none of my kids had landlines. They said, why do you have a landline? What is this phone here for? Well, for emergencies. Like, I mean, if I'm in the yard and there's an emergency, I call from my phone. It's like, it doesn't really matter. Where's the emergency come in? Then they go, well, it's 911. I don't really know. I mean, it's what it is. Remember when we used film? Remember how you used to take pictures by posing? Now it's like, my grandkids have a birthday party. It's like 1,000 pictures of cake. It's like, why do I need 1,000? I don't really need them, but you can do that, right? But I want you to think about film for a second. And the reason I use film, because a lot of the professional photographers, when digital cameras came out, said, this is terrible. I can never use this. Now they all use digital. Early forms of digital were a little blurry, not great, but they got better, 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 better. Same strategy in transforming schools, same strategy in transforming a lot of things. Maps, remember when we used maps? And I always kid people because maps weren't as dangerous as 8 pages of MapQuest instructions to go 7 miles. It's like, can you keep reading? My wife would be turning the page, go 300 feet, turn here. No, it's like, no. But I mean, now, look at what we have now. I mean, it gets better and better. And then I think about this. We give a lot of third graders 40 pounds of books and a backpack on their back. And we say, we're here to educate you for your future. They're carrying books that most of the information that's on their back is out of date by the time it's printed. And we think about learning from listening is really, these kids are about learning by doing. They're active. The digital kids want to do things. They want to act. So that's the landscape. That's where we are. Let me spend a little time talking about self-learning. Peter Drucker said this in 1995, I think. Drucker is a famous business guy who's, amazing. He said, in the next 20 years, power will shift to the customer. For the simple reason is the customer has access to information worldwide. What did he mean by that? Well, I'm not sure in this room, but if you most recently bought a TV, a car, refrigerator, stove, I don't care. You did not go into a store saying, can you show me your microwaves, or can you show me the cars you have for sale, or can you show me the TVs? You did a massive search. And you went in saying, I want this model and I'll pay this much money, right? The power has shifted to the consumer. Consumer has access to information worldwide. You know so much more than you ever before. See, it's been a massive shift. Go into a Best Buy and just hang out for a day and watch the people. Don't do a day, maybe an hour, but get a coffee, go in, watch people shop. They just walk over to people and say, I want this version of that, and then they go like, okay, I'll go get it. And they just go get it. And that's what happens with most of the people. It's just the way it goes. So I want you to listen to this teacher. His name's Jordan Dollier. He's a teacher on the Waianae coast of Hawaii. He said, the reason I use him is he says it better than anyone I know. In this talk, he talks about wanting to be a great uncle to his niece, and he makes the connection to being a great teacher in the world today. So listen to Jordan. He's kind of interesting, fun guy.
I've always wanted to be a fantastic uncle. As the youngest of 3 brothers, with one brother who's 4 and another brother who's 8 years older than me, I always kind of figured I wasn't going to have kids first, or so I hoped. And when my first niece was born, I made sure to take every opportunity I could to do what I thought a fantastic uncle would do. Now, one such opportunity, I was on the back lanai at my parents' house, and I was sitting with one of my brothers, and my niece, Haley, who was 5 years old at this time, that's her, she came up to me, and she tapped me. She said, Uncle Jojo, I'm Uncle Jojo. She said, Uncle Jojo, would you please get me some juice? And I thought to myself, like, of course I can get you some juice. I want to be a fantastic uncle. I'll get you all the juice in the world. I'll make it just rain juice upon you. Of course I'll get you some juice. So I stood up. And as I stood up, I felt a tap on my shoulder. And I looked, and it was my brother. And he said, hey, where are you going? And I thought, well, I'm going to go be a fantastic uncle. I'm about to get my niece some juice. And he said, well, do you think she could do that for herself? And I hadn't thought of that, so I said, well, what do you mean? And he said, well, really, what does it take to get juice? And I said, well, I'd have to go inside, and I'd have to open the refrigerator, and I'd have to, pick up a packet of juice, and, unscrew the cap, and, give it to Haley. And he's like, okay. Now, do you think she's capable of doing that herself? And I said, I want to believe in my niece. I want to be a fantastic uncle, so of course she could do that by herself. And he looked at me and he said, well, then why would you take that experience away from her? And why would you make her depend on you to get juice? And I had not thought of it like that. And as an educator, I've found that sometimes in my drive to do what I think a fantastic educator would do and do as much as I can, sometimes I've taken away meaningful experiences from my students. Because sometimes what we do for others is a tacit statement of what we believe they can't do for themselves.
So I want you to think about that. Think about, as educators and as parents and as others in the room, we give a student, a teacher, from kindergarten through grade 12, and every day that teacher tells them exactly what they need to do, how they need to do it, when they need to bring it in, and in the end result is we want to make them be learners when we graduate at 12th grade. Like, when did we let them do it themselves? When did we cause gradual release? When did we stop having them depend on us for the learning and the learning got transferred over to them? When did that happen? Well, it didn't. And there's more schools in the country I go to, and on the wall they say, our mission is to create lifelong learners. Yeah? Well, we've created a lot of lifelong students, because they feel like they need you to tell them what to do, but they never actually own the learning. They never actually take it on themselves. And not only that, but we teach them all of everything they need to know, and quite frankly, there are a lot of students in that class that could do it on their own. But we don't let them do it. We make them do it the way we want it to be done. And that's, that kind of thinking is not something that's out there in the field. So I want you to think, I basically said this earlier, teaching is one but not the only way to achieve learning. I struggle with this idea of like, what do we mean by learning? What is learning? Right, so I've done a lot of work internationally, and it was a long period of time I was doing a fair amount of work in Singapore. And in Singapore, one of the things they've transformed into is, this is the mission of their schools. We educate children for the unknown. That's their mission. Not for the known, for the unknown. They'll face more unknown in their life. How do we get them to face the unknown and be resilient and be thoughtful and be aggressive and be confident about learning? When do we do that? I don't really know. But what I suggest is that we have to start thinking differently. See, what I think learning really is that when we do something with students, like we teach something, and then on their own, they say, I'm going to go study this some more. I'm going to take this on. Right? It's like, not that they just did what we said to do, but they went deeper. They got excited about it. And they took over the learning. They took it on as their own. So I tweeted this out. A teacher who teaches students to learn without them prepares a student for the 21st century. That's what it's about. I mean, you all are learners. I asked you, you said you learned things all on your own, right? But, how did that happen, and when did it happen? And do kids really believe that when they're in a school? No, they basically believe that they'll do what the teacher says and they'll get the work done. But some of our best students love doing that. Just tell me what to do, I'll give it right back to you. They don't have ownership. It's not really theirs yet. So I've been playing around with this. And so I often say to educators, and I know I have a lot of them in the room tonight, we're always struggling with how to teach something. I think as educators we have to stop thinking about how we would teach something, and we have to look at the content we have and say things like this. I wonder how we'd learn this today. How would we learn this? So, I've asked educators at times to try something. Go into a class and take one of your units of instruction and do something like this. So we're going to learn about, I don't know, nothing popped into my head right now, so I'm going to say the causes of World War I. And as a teacher, you might say, I don't have an idea. I have no clue as to what that's all about. So why don't you all see if you could find out what you can about the causes of World War I. How we got into World War I. Go off and play around with that, and then let's talk about it later. The first thing what they're going to do, right? What will they do? They'll Google it, right? Which is not even like, and then they'll get like 3 million hits, right? And then it's like, okay, now what, right? And so they start getting into it, and then have them divide up. Say, why don't the 4 of you meet with the 4 of them and talk about what your idea of thinking is and what their thinking is, and then you guys present tomorrow. You come back and share that thinking with us, and let them go at it. Right? Instead of saying, okay, we're going to start. Here are 4 things. This is why, and this is what, and they have no clue. In the end, they'll answer it just the way you said, but they won't have had power over it. Does that make some sense to y'all? I mean, I'm not saying you do that to I want to be clear. I'm not saying do it all the time. I had a professor at the university. He came in, he said, I did that, and I had a parent call me. I said, you did? Yeah, the kid went home and said, Dad, you're paying $40,000 a year, and the teacher's telling me to go look it up myself. I'm thinking like, oh God, it's like, but see, they're trained to do that. They're trained, that's what school is. Somebody's going to tell me what I need to know. That's the challenge. We got to figure out how we, slowly, I can think of any university or college, it's like, that's crazy. So think about that. So I've been playing with this, and this is a very rough picture of how I think we should play in schools. So let me share this wonderful drawing I did on a plane about 3 months ago. I'm not good at the art side, but before I explain this to you, I want to explain two things. I want to explain first this thing, self-checkout. How many people here have been through a self-checkout? Okay, cool. So the guy I worked with at Bain Venture, Joe Gagnon, that's how he likes his name presented. Joe is the lead researcher at IBM who helped develop the self-checkout system. It was a big Walmart project that IBM was involved in. And so Joe said, here's what we know about the self-checkout system. One, it's the slowest checkout system in the supermarket. Item two, it is the most satisfying checkout in the supermarket. And I said, Joe, it can't possibly be if it's the slowest. How could it be the most satisfying? He said, believe me, we spent millions, millions, and that's what we know. So here's how Joe would explain it. So we're in a grocery store and we go to a professional checker-outer cashier, and he or she is standing there ready, and you pile your stuff up, and they start doing that, that motion with the things, and they scan your like 6-pack of Coke, and it doesn't go beep, right? And then they do it again and again, like maybe 3 or 4 passes, and you're standing there, right? Now, how do you feel when they're doing that? Like, will you hurry up? Come on, you're a pro, right? You should be able to, one swipe, the thing should be going ding. And then they take their glasses and they punch the number in, and you're standing there like, this is killing me. Right? And they interview people and say, so then now go to your self-checkout, and you are in charge. Right? And you got that 6-pack of Coke. You go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, nothing's going on. You're wiping it, you're moving it. It goes beep, and you put it down, and you go, yeah, down it goes, right? And the next one, you're looking up the thing, and you're punching the numbers in, and like 3 hours later, you leave the store. But like, when you leave, it's like, I did it. I'm out, They're closing the lights in the back room. Going, that person's gone. But the fact of the matter is that because you did it, you were in control. That was important. Hold that thought. You do it. That's important. Second thing I want to explain is Amazon. How many people have bought something on Amazon? How many people have bought something while I'm talking on Amazon? Okay. Because people do. They're like, oh, I might as well buy things. The guy's talking. So here's what Amazon does. Amazon creates for you a shopping experience so that you do not have to touch, talk, do anything. It is they let you look at other prices. They give you everything you need to do the shopping experience and not talk to a soul. They don't even have a store, right? I mean, they just broker things for everybody, and it's like the ultimate shopping experience. You can sit there and just do it. Before Christmas and the holidays, it's like, yeah, Amazon, baby, And but here's the thing about Amazon: they don't want to talk to you. So if you're going to buy something and it says that the coat comes in black, but when you press the black button it doesn't turn black, and you go through the process of contacting them, that night they will fix that. That will never be repeated again. They will never get another call for that button not working. They'll fix it because it's repetitive. Shopping is a repetitive, fairly repetitive process. So hold on to those two thoughts. You got to do it yourself. There's a lot of repetitiveness. Think about from the bottom up. If we started designing our lessons for first students to try to learn it on their own. We did everything. We created, like if I was going to talk about even World War I, the causes, we did a video. We set up some websites. We got students and we gave them everything and said, I want you to start to investigate this about the causes of World War I. All right, and there's questions for you to answer. And the teacher, by the way, you see where at the top it says one-on-one? That's the teacher. The teacher didn't start the lesson by letting the students try to absorb the content first. Give them as much as you can. Watch them. Some of the students won't get it, like we weren't getting it, right? So many to many, we might say, you know what, these two kids over here have got it. They figured it out. So he said he'll tell us to go over and work with them, right? So there's 4 kids working and trying to get the information and knowledge. Now, there'll be students that can't get it still. So maybe there's a paraprofessional, or maybe there's someone, a phone a friend. There's someone that they know, right? So they go one to many. And then, but the point is that if they can't get it, they can go to the teacher. You see, now just play that backwards. What happens now is we do the whole lesson, and then we go hunt for the person that doesn't know it. We give everybody a teacher whether they need it or not, because you know what? I want to make sure that they need me. So can you see the sense of thinking about redesigning some of this work? Because here, let me tell you, long A has not ever changed. It's still long A. So if you're teaching long A, and every year you go through the process of teaching in the whole class long A or double-digit addition with carrying or multiplication, those things have not changed. Those are the things that, as an educator, you could deliver in an environment that's more driven towards self-learning than doing something like this. Where does the teacher come in, and the value is in higher level learning? What about, as I said to an earlier group, what about if we were talking with students and we said, who's the most important ally to the US? Canada or Great Britain? That's a whole, that's not a self, that's like, oh, there's a lot of work there. That's a lot of thinking. That's where great teachers create great opportunities and great lessons and great power. But when we're talking about other things, skill acquisition, that's really, we can free up a lot of your time and address your time to the people that really need it. Does that make sense to you all? I mean, I know that it's radical, and I know that, just think of Charlie Chaplin's mask, right? The guy's crazy and he's trying to convince us of this thing, but that's really, the point is that we really need to start to think about this idea of self-learning. So let me get to the point of wrapping it up, because I need to jump on an airplane. So let me talk just briefly about this idea of the future of learning. Because when I think about the future of learning, and I think about the two big domains I talked to you about, the landscape and then self-learning, if you think about those things, I think the future of learning is likely to bend on 4 big trends. The first is a drive toward personalization. We need to figure out, you know, not that it gets to every granular level, but we need to figure out, how do we make learning more personalized for our kids? You know, that's really important. We need to figure out the impact that technology has, the explosive growth of technology. Now, I'm going to be real clear. Technology is not, and let me show you that now. Technology won't replace teachers. But teachers who use technology will replace teachers who don't. All right, we are not going to see teachers go away. Actually, teachers become very, very important. In that pyramid model, I mean, teachers are incredibly important because they manage all the learning. Manage all the learning. This item 3 is an ecosystem of learning. What do I mean by that? It's like learning just doesn't happen in schools. Learning happens when they go for a ride with grandpa. I mean, learning happens all the time, and if they can show and demonstrate knowledge, we have to start to accept that knowledge, as long as they can demonstrate it. Right? And we know a lot about, in item 4, there's a lot of advances in the science of learning. We do know that if, you know, here's something that we know. If somebody really learns something very, very deeply, like, you know, you might have a student or a friend or somebody who, I'm just going to pick a topic, like they're a really great golfer, or they collect antique clocks, or they're heavy into dinosaurs. And if they know it really, 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 really well, if somebody ends up doing really deep learning, guess what? They can learn lots of things. The power of being a deep learner. It transitions to other things. They don't have to know a little bit about this subject, that subject, this subject, that subject. If they're deep learners, they can really learn a lot. That's what's really important. These are the kind of ideas that we have to look for in the future. So I like to think of, as a community, you ask yourselves these questions, and as educators, you ask yourself these questions as I wrap it up. How do we let ourselves get in a position of needing to reinvent our work? You know, how do we get to this point where we have, you know, we're still like the Indy 500 pit crew, right? How did we let all the opportunities go by? Like, why haven't we over the years been able to recognize that something hasn't been working well and self-corrected? You know, internally, educators talking and community members saying, you know what? we should be trying some of these things. We should be doing some of this. How did we get to the point where it didn't get there? And lastly, what would it be like to work in a self-correcting, innovative system? A system that has the dynamics of saying, there's some new things going on. How can we learn this stuff? How could we use this to better educate our children for their futures and our futures as well? You know, I think those are really three really important questions. And I think communities need to start saying, why aren't we moving where we need to be? What's keeping us from that? Those are the powerful conversations. That's what I loved about this morning with the business people that were there. I mean, those are the kinds of things, the questions we should be thinking about. See, if I think we start to answer that, I think we get to what I call the epic win. You know, we create communities that people want to be, they want to be in those communities, because that's where great learning is going on. It's not just one model, it's a powerful model that's layered on top of all of this. So I want to thank you for giving me some time tonight to hang out with you. I apologize for kind of moving beyond tonight, but I know that from my day of having 4 speeches today and engaging, I had great conversations with lots of people. I think it's a very special place to be. And I think, you know, from what I see, is this great opportunity that lies ahead. So I want to thank you all so very much for being with me tonight. And I think I turn it back over. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.